partnerships to the international agenda, mobilizing resources and facilitating joint business opportunities and project proposal. IDFC Climate Facility. Let's work together to implement the Sustainable Development Goals towards 2030 and beyond. What is IDFC? The International Development Finance Club, created in 2011, is a network of 26 public development banks. Our mission? Speaking with a common voice, to leverage a greater impact in major international debates, and to contribute to the implementation of the SDGs, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Our goals? Knowledge sharing and capacity building among the IDFC institutions, enhanced collaboration between members and partners, and pursuing advocacy on the role of public development banks. How does it work? All year long, the club is working on contributing to the international agenda, coordinating working groups on SDGs, gender, climate, and biodiversity, releasing common strategic and operational publications, and reporting their annual commitment towards climate and biodiversity. IDFC. Let's work together to implement the Sustainable Development Goals towards 2030 and beyond. What is IDFC Climate Facility? Created in 2019, the facility has been supporting IDFC members in enabling knowledge exchange and offering capacity development on climate-related topics. Our 3 goals: to strengthen climate finance expertise and capacities, to originate and develop joint climate projects, to institutionalize and facilitate collaborative work among members on climate change. Our activity lines: knowledge sharing, capacity building, access to international climate finance, joint business opportunities. In the past couple of years, the IDFC had been supporting members in mainstream common principles on mitigation and adaptation, developing a framework for the operationalization of the Paris Agreement alignment, promoting a mentoring program between institutions, delivering climate toolbox including GHG accounting, climate risk assessment, Paris Agreement alignment and climate strategy, offering trainings on climate risk assessment, climate strategies, and adaptation, supporting events and partnerships to the international agenda, mobilizing resources and facilitating joint business opportunities and project proposal. IDFC Climate Facility. Let's work together to implement the Sustainable Development Goals towards 2030 and beyond. What is IDFC? The International Development Finance Club, created in 2011, is a network of 26 public development banks. Our mission? Speaking with a common voice, to leverage a greater impact in major international debates, and to contribute to the implementation of the SDGs, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Our goals? Knowledge sharing and capacity building among the IDFC institutions, enhanced collaboration between members and partners, and pursuing advocacy on the role of public development banks. How does it work? All year long, the club is working on contributing to the international agenda, coordinating working groups on SDGs, gender, climate, and biodiversity, releasing common strategic and operational publications, and reporting their annual commitment towards climate and biodiversity. IDFC. Let's work together to implement
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. It's a real pleasure having you all here. I can hear myself, but I think that's okay. Well, my name is Barbara Buchner. I'm the Global Managing Director of Climate Policy Initiative, and it's a true pleasure being here today for our side event at the IDFC pavilion here on IDFC's contribution to climate finance, a record high. So you can already imagine a little bit what we are going to talk about today. My name again is Barbara. I have been with CPI since the very beginning, and we have been working actually with the IDFC since many years on this green finance tracking here. Just for those of you who do not know what Climate Policy Initiative is, we are a global advisor and analytical organization. We have a very deep expertise in both policy and finance, and we work mostly with governments and financial institutions to really help drive economic growth while addressing climate change. Um, you will hear more about the IDFC contribution very soon, but I can assure you that there will be some very exciting and very impressive figures that we will be hearing about. But before going into that, what I'd like to do today is just get us started and set the scene a little bit with our latest figures and information on CPI's global landscape of climate finance, which is a report and some work that we've been doing for over a decade now. So we bring a very deep expertise in this spectrum. Again, what we do is we bring together very many data sources and really try to provide the most comprehensive overview of how much money is going into climate action. And we do that by really trying to look both at public and at private financial flows. We look at global flows, but also domestic flows where we have the data. And we really try to show in a way how money is flowing along the life cycle of climate finance. So let me walk you through the key findings. And just again, to get us started, there will be some great news. We have actually, for the first time, crossed the 1 trillion milestone in climate finance that has been mobilized. But there's obviously also some bad news, which is that ultimately what we see from our work is that we need more than 5 times what currently is flowing into climate action. And that I think is particularly important as we look back into this year, 2023, where we had all records broken in terms of heat around the world. So here you kind of see an overview of where we are. And again, building on this decade of tracking experience that we have established at CPI, you can see that average annual climate finance flows reached almost 1.27, so almost 3 trillion US dollars. These are again global climate finance flows, both public and private, and really kind of just trying to give you an understanding of where we stand compared to our global climate temperature goals. Because 1.3 is actually a huge increase from our last full update of our climate finance landscape. Its climate financial flows almost doubled from the 4 years ago when we had the last full study on climate finance. This large increase is basically driven by two main developments. The first one is a real increase in mitigation finance. We've seen more than 440 billion US dollars of money going towards mitigation finance. And the remainder of the increase is actually driven by better data and more comprehensive data. And also that is a very important part, which is something that we've been trying to drive over the last decade as well. Just for your information, also what we are looking at is primary financial flows. So we really look at how much money is being invested to really to understand the real economy impact. So at the project level, what is being built in terms of renewable energy projects, or how much is being invested in terms of absorptive capacity. So this increase obviously is very good news, but as you can already imagine, we are falling still far short of where we need to be. And what we've done here is bring together different studies from organizations, from the IEA for example, the Global Commission on Adaptation, to really bring an understanding of what are estimates of the needs in this space. And what we can see is that we are at least, again, 5 times short of where we need to stand. And if you look at the average figures, actually, we would need to be around 9 trillion US dollars by 2030, and even higher so if you go into 2050. Um, I think also the other point I wanted to make on this slide here is let's put these figures into perspective. This 1.3 trillion are only 1% of global GDP. this year, 1%. And we are spending at least 1 trillion in direct subsidies in fossil fuels and another 4 to 5 trillion in implicit subsidies into fossil fuels. So it's not only about kind of increasing the money into climate action, but it's also shifting existing flows away from harmful activities. I think the other point I wanted to make is that also delaying climate action and failing to keep the world on a 1.5 degrees Celsius trajectory will also result in significantly higher costs in the longer term. And I think what we've again tried to do is bring together different studies and show in a way what the cost of inaction are and how they are going to increase over time. The slide here shows you that how increasing the climate investments on the left-hand side here in line with the needs for 1.5 degree scenarios actually leads to considerable reduction in the social economic losses. And ultimately, if you would stick to business as usual, that would lead us to more than double of the losses of a 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario. So just again, I can't help but show you our spaghetti diagram, which we have been doing now for over 10 years. We are now supposed to call it, my communications team tells me I have to call it Sankey diagram. It's still a spaghetti diagram because it was born in Venice when we had our first office there at CPI. But what you can see here is basically how money flows from the sources, so on the left-hand side, both public and private, through the instruments that are being used to the users and ultimately the sector. So really kind of showing how money flows across its life cycle. And let me directly go into the bigger picture of who is behind this 1.3 trillion US dollars. I think what we have seen is that actually public actors now a little ahead of private actors. And I think the big, obviously, point I want to make here and that I'm making actually since we started is the important role of development finance institutions. Development finance institutions out of the almost 640 billion US dollars that we are seeing are actually contributing more than 360 billion. So they are contributing about a third, like about 30% of the overarching public and private climate finance. So huge importance of development finance institutions. And IDFC obviously plays a really key role in that one. I think it's about a third of that. So key role of that one. Just to continue to our findings in the context of where does it end up in terms of mitigation finance. We have seen actually this year for the first time a record high. We're about 1.2 trillion US dollars that go towards mitigation activities, and that's a 60% increase from our last figures, and that's mostly triggered by increases in electric vehicles and in the renewable energy sector. So this is a pretty big increase. You can also see that this is an area where the private sector actually has stepped up considerably. So you can see here in orange how the share of private investments into mitigation activities. And again, that I think is a good news because we can see that we have a growing maturity of many technologies that really attract private investors in this context. Still, also just to make the point here, what we are doing, we're looking at existing flows, but we're also comparing them to the needs, which is here in yellow. It's probably not that easy to see, but also on the secondary axis, we have actually the potential of different sectors. And while we have seen this huge increase in mitigation finance, we still see a huge need and a huge gap. And that's particular in absolute terms in the transport and energy sectors. But in relative terms, what we see is that a huge need to increase funding, particularly for the agriculture, forestry, and land use sectors, which I think is particularly important because we see a huge mitigation potential in these areas. So I think this is a real call for action to see here. Just turning very quickly into the adaptation finance, obviously another area that is attracting a lot of attention at this COP here. And I think here we don't have really good news because while we have seen in absolute terms a record high, so we are a little over 60 billion US dollars of adaptation finance, we have seen compared to the increase in other sectors actually a relatively modest increase. And so it's overarching. We have only about 5% of the overarching financial flows that go towards adaptation finance. Mitigation finance is about 91%, and the rest goes to activities that have both mitigation and adaptation benefits. And I think, again, the one important point here on adaptation finance that this is mostly financed by public actors, public financial institutions, and again, development finance institutions having an important, extremely important role. Showing you again the part of what needs to happen and how much more do we need in the context of adaptation finance. We've brought together again other estimates and can see that ultimately what we need for adaptation investments to happen is that they need to increase by at least 3.5 times from current level. So I think there is a lot that needs to happen. So hopefully there will be some good news on this action, on this area as well. Just going back to the global findings again, where does that money end up geographically? What we've seen is a continuation of a trend that we've seen over the last decade, which is that most money is actually being invested in East Asia and Pacific, followed by Western Europe, the US, and Canada. Together, these three regions actually attract almost 85% of all investment flows. So I think obviously that shows you also another point, which we've done for the first time in our landscape this year, where we've looked at least developed countries and developing countries and emerging economies, where much less finance is actually flowing. Least developed countries attract only about 2% of the overarching investment. So I think this is certainly another call for action that needs to happen. And the other point I just want to also bring up, which again is, I think, very important to think about how can we scale flows and investments into climate action, is that more than 80% of these global flows are raised and spent in the same country. So I think this really highlights the importance of enabling environment, of strong regulations, and really working with the domestic financial institutions to kind of build the market and scale up. So my last slide here is just like some of the recommendations, and I hope that we will get into those also when we come to our panel discussion here. I think the first one is there is a real need to transform the financial system, both across public and private finance. And I think obviously been talking a lot about development finance institutions, about the international financial architecture reforms this year. So I think this is something that certainly is important to continue, because I think these are institutions that are uniquely positioned to take on more risks and to use and leverage concessional money to unlock more private investments. Also in the private sector, I think we have seen some good news in terms of pledges and like net zero commitments, but they still need to really transform into action on the ground and in the real capital flows that not only go towards climate action, but also go away from harmful fossil fuel activities. Second area, something that Remy actually has been talking about a lot, we need to bridge climate and development needs. Really, we need to better harness the benefits and the synergies between development and climate action that clearly exists there. But we also need to be much more careful as we think about phasing out fossil fuel, which are still very embedded in our economies, how we do that in a way that is just, how we do that in a way that really takes into account the needs on the local and community level. Third part, I already mentioned that one, mobilizing domestic capital is key. And in this context, obviously, it's not only about having very strong domestic regulations and enabling environments, as already said, but it's also about building the capacity. It's about technical assistance. It's about like having better monitoring and reporting systems and really making sure that we just build and deepen the domestic capital markets. And then the final point, just I always have to end on that one because it's very close to my heart, is we need to continue to improve the data. You cannot manage what you can't measure. So in the end, we have been doing a lot in order to get a better understanding of where we stand. But good data really can help you inform decision making and can help you understand both the gaps but also the solutions. So hopefully that's something that we will continue to work together and in a way also help standardize something which I sometimes call a wild west of many standards and of many taxonomies and methodologies. So I think there is still a lot we need to do. With that, I hope you've gotten a first impression of where we stand globally. But again, as I said, like extremely important to outline and stress the report, the role of development finance institutions. So without further ado, Nicola, I'm going to hand over to you to talk us through the IDFC latest screen mapping. So over to you.
Thank you, Barbara. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicola Picchettino, the Secretary General of IDFC, and I'm very pleased to be here with you with all these fantastic panelists we will have the chance to hear. Before starting the discussion, I wanted to present you some of the key deliverables we released this year, starting with the green finance mapping. Thanks to Barbara, we had the chance to go through all the global needs for climate finance, and what we can say is that IDFC is the first provider of climate finance all over the world. We in 2022 provided 288 billion euros of climate finance, which is, if I take the figures of Barbara, more than 20% of the global finance in the world. Um, some figures too maybe highlight the fact that since 2015 we provided more than 1.5 trillion dollars, which is an impressive numbers too. We provided the highest mitigation finance with an increase of 31% from 2021, and also the highest adaptation finance with an increase of 52% from 2021. I go quickly because we will have the chance to hear more in details our two co-chairs, Javier Diaz and Serge Cue. But I wanted also to share with you our state of ambition. You may all remember that in 2021, all the IDFC members committed to 8 commitments. And the first one was to reach carbon neutrality as soon as possible, of course, and transition to low carbon economy. We also committed to mobilize 1.3 trillion between 2019 and 2025. And at the end of 2022, we are about $900 billion. We also committed to support the energy transition toward a decarbonized economy, to end the provision of international public finance for new unabated coal power generation abroad by the end of 2021, and you will see that we succeed. We also commit to mainstream adaptation and resilience and climate transition and physical risk, to promote ecosystem-based adaptation and nature-based solutions, and also to continue to support adaptations efforts within countries of intervention, and last but not least, to strengthen support to integrated climate disaster risk management. I also wanted to share with you our new paper related on the post-2025 climate finance, and to highlight the fact that it will be discussed in detail on December the 5th at 9 a.m. on this pavilion with a specific side events. You know that some element of context in the Paris Agreement, it was set up that prior to 2025, we needed to fix a new collective quantified goal on climate finance. We also had last year during the last COP the Sharm el Sheikh dialogue that was launched, and we are trying to reconcile in this paper these two positions. And to be very quick, but to just give you a taste of this paper, we within the IDFC, because we are the largest provider of public developments and climate finance globally, we commit to promote climate mainstreaming and we are a trusted group of development practitioners. We will inform that the climate finance and the practitioner state of place and perspective regarding increased ambition and impact. We are also calling for an ambitious and systemic incentivized framework. And we signal in this paper that IDFC's availability to contribute further to technical dialogues and working groups. Some word quickly also about the common principles. It is linked to our green finance mapping. You know that the multilateral development banks agreed on the common principles to speak about the same thing when we are speaking about climate finance. And in DFC, we also agreed and approved those two common principles on mitigation and on adaptation, and I wanted to insist on the two side events on these specific pavilions that will discuss in details those common principles. But it's important to highlight the fact that we agreed with those common principles again. Then one word about the signature of the Memorandum of Understanding with MCI that will be signed just after this event with our two co-chairs and Benoit Guéret over here, who is representing MCI. Towards MCI is a coalition of public and private financial institutions around the globe aiming to systematically integrate climate change consideration across their strategies, program, operation, and of course we are working closely with them, and we will in this MOU we will assess that we will do more with them. And just one word, because we are running out of time, about our climate facility. You know that within IDFC, we are producing papers, but we have also a technical assistance facility. And I wanted to share with you three main events, and maybe the first one on the fast track onboarding program. The second one is that we will sign with the German government a delegation of 20 million euros to support IDFC members in developing a low carbon and climate resilient urban infrastructure together with the municipalities. And last but not least, I like the fact that we will sign also a fund delegation with the Global Climate Fund relating to just energy transition. And you have all the events that will discuss these subjects in detail on this specific pavilion. Thanks. I will give the floor to Barbara.
Thank you so much, Nicola. I think very impressive the suite of accomplishments that IDFC had, and I think I'm very excited to hear particular. Well, that's both covering, several of the recommendations basically that we've been looking at, both from kind of some of the data and the principles, but also technical assistance facility. I think that's great news. But with that, I'm very happy now to get started on our panel discussion here. We have a fantastic setup of panelists here, and I'm actually going first to our new co-chairman from the IDFC, which is wonderful to have you both here. Javier Diaz, who is the CEO of Bancoldex, and Serge Ecuyer, who is the CEO of WAD. And again, it's fantastic to have you both here, and I'm very excited about your leadership in this space. So I think what we'd like to get started just is hearing a little bit your reflections, as the new chairman of IDFC, of how you see these results that Nicola has been sharing with us, and really thinking about particularly the record high of green finance. What does that mean? And what is the basically what's the progress that you see in the context of kind of high ambition that IDFC is certainly reaching for? So I think I'll just, without further ado, I'll ask you to get started.
Thank you, Barbara. Greetings to you. Greetings to Nicolas, Remy, Serge, Benoit. It's a true honor to be here and sharing with everybody who's here to discuss this very interesting topic. So I will probably make 2 points. First one related to the IDFC, and second one related to the high interest rate environment in which we actually have to navigate. So regarding the IDFC, as Nicolas and you, Barbara, were speaking, I was looking at that board over there, and if I may just turn your attention to that board, this is what we have accomplished, which is tremendous. Since 2011, you can count record highs, you can count trillions, you can count new members, you can count mapping reports. So this is what we've done. Now, if I may please turn your attention to this board, this is the institutions who have actually done this. Again, tremendous, because as a club, we have been able to achieve that coming from over here. But even though we speak as one voice, those great accomplishments have been done more or less individually. It's the individual balance sheets of the banks and the institutions that are on this board which have accomplished that. So, for the future, and speaking about co-chairmanship, which I am delighted to share with my friend Serge, um, the interesting thing will be to connect between ourselves. And I think we can share developments in that regard, which are extremely exciting. Let me just cite a few examples. BNDS is spearheading the Green Coalition to preserve the Amazon. We hadn't seen that before, and this is completely welcome, and you will be hearing a lot about that over the coming days. CAF is providing guarantees to members like ourselves, Bancoldex, Cofida, and so forth, because CAF has better access to capital. CAF can access cheaper resources in the capital markets, and they pass on the cheaper rates to us, and then we do the same with our SME clients. BC, Argentina, it's going to require a lot of help. Argentina is going through turbulent economic times. So my sense of the future and of the club is on the fact that we are working together more now than ever, and deepening that collaboration, Barbara, is what will be helpful to achieving that quantum leap in terms of not staying at the 1.3 trillion landmark, but actually doubling and tripling that. So again, my faith is on deeper collaboration and joining the dots better on this part of the board. And then the second point is regarding high interest rates. Unfortunately, interest rates globally remain very high, and the same applies to our individual countries. So we need to lend cheaper, and that is not easily achieved, but it can be achieved. Again, it's the same collaborative mechanism whereby those who have access to better capital or who rely on stronger governments can actually pass on those benefits to those of us who don't. And again, I would like to highlight examples. AFD is working with Bancoldex, who I represent, on getting a Colombian peso denominated loan, something which would have been unthinkable 5 years ago, maybe even less, is now being achieved. So those examples, I think, are illustrative of how collaboration amongst ourselves will actually provide better results and more accelerated green financing in a very, very challenging environment, because economic growth is not helping. So the planet is growing meagerly. Economies are growing negatively in some ways. So I'll probably stop there for to leave room for the next question. But again, to recap, wonderful achievements, better connections will actually take us forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very helpful looking backwards, but also looking in what needs to happen in order to build on all what has been done over the last year. So collaboration. But Serge, over to you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you, Remy, Benoit, and naturally Javier, Nicholas. Thank you. Thanks to all for being here. The good thing is that Javier has said everything, so I'll do the rest. So what is left with me is basically nothing much but two things here. The first thing is the alignment, the clear alignment we all have on the objective of climate finance. How are we going to reorient the climate finance system to our objectives? It is clear that we share the same goals, because we basically face the same reality. As you know, this part of the world suffer a lot of climate change, and we are devoted to change that. So the objective is very clear, and I think we share this. The second thing is it is a question of quantum. It's a question of volume. Um, to win this battle, I think we have to allocate as much means and balance sheet as possible. It is a question of quantum. The problems are deep, and we know that we need to do the right thing and try to do things right. So when it comes to our numbers, the quantum, what has been described here is is amazing. That is very clear. It is amazing. But we know that the magnitude of the disasters uh, 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 will lead us to do even more. So we know that we have to think. We have to think out of the box. We have to think and innovatively. We have to see how the global market, capital market, can be used, reoriented for the objectives I previously mentioned. So we're working on that, and we will, in a few weeks or so, will come on we'll disclose a transaction we're currently working on, so as to combine our forces to reach the right quantum that is needed to face our challenges. That will be all for me at this point in time. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yes. And yeah, I think what I love about this panel here is really kind of that there is real examples. So it's not just like talking about what could happen, but really showing that there is thinking outside of the box and really trying to innovate in order to kind of get to the scale we need. I think no one better than Rémi Rieu, obviously, to talk about that. Rémi, who is the CEO of Agence Française de Développement, and was the IDFC chairman and has been leading the organization to where it is certainly today, but is also the chairman of the Financing Commons Summit, which I think is the next stage, which really helps ensure that we use this whole ecosystem of public development banks to make a change. So Remy, love to just get your reflections also on where do we need to go, but also that we have heard about alignment already. How can we make sure that there is actually that the banks actually are aligning their portfolios better with the Paris Agreement, with the goals, with climate action. And basically, I see a very easy question for you here is, so how do you imagine the future of climate finance? So I think we can stay here for a few more hours.
Thank you. Happy to be back at the IDFC pavilion. It's a good tradition now since Madrid, if I'm right, the first time. And so all colleagues in the room, Paolo there, we're all partners in crime, in fight, I would say, against climate change. Since 2011 for IDFC, all IDFC colleagues following now our two co-chairs, dear Javier and Serge, and we're partners in crime also with Barbara since COP21 2015 and the first assessment of climate finance and where we stood at that time regarding the 100 billion. It's still here if I'm right in these rooms. So we did a lot, but our journey has not ended at all, and we need to do it again here in Dubai and have our collective voice heard loud and clear and help the negotiators, of course, move forward. What happened since 2009 in Copenhagen, then 2015 in Paris is climate finance actually was born and is relying on ODA, on well, development finance. So we, in our institutions, as development finance institutions, we have a sort of treasure, and something strange happened. I mean, we were in a very remote place in the financial system, all of us, and somehow we came back because we are more patient, maybe because we accumulated a knowledge about climate that was not in commercial or in investment world. And it's a bit awkward at the same time because we were not used to be attractive or to be called into something that was not exactly the development finance, actually. So it helped for a moment, and it pushed ODA above 200 billion US dollar, which is not that bad. Um, and we work collectively on what it means to align. And on the supply side, of course, our projects financing, but also more important on the demand side, meaning what it means for our clients and partners to align. So this is the knowledge now we have. But my feeling is that this, this mandate is somehow overburdening all of us now, especially now that we know we have to triple or quadruple what we and we're proud of it already achieved. So yes, there's a new moment we have to define to be consistent with the goal, a moment where we have to reconcile climate and development, true, in a single narrative and framework that would push us further where we need to be in each country and in terms of international cooperation. So we need a new global financial architecture. And from day one, IDFC now with FIX has been, in my view, prefigurating what the new global financial architecture is about, meaning embarking local, national financial institutions, because we have to turn the system somehow upside down to originate the number and the quality of projects that is needed. And then we have to disintricate somehow in this financing world something for the most vulnerable, not the poorest, but the most vulnerable, as a sort of guarantee. So that's the discussion around loss and damage, of course, plus part adaptation, plus classic ODA, I would say, humanitarian. That's one pot, and we have to be very clear about it, so that we can unlock the 2.1c discussion, which is about the contribution of public investment for the reorientation of the financial system as a whole. And we're still a bit unclear, I think, in the way we are all thinking. But I see and I hope IDFC, of course, because of the friendship, because of the depth now of our cooperation, that will only increase under our new leadership, as Serge and Javier already started to explain. We'll have a key contribution on all this, so that again the political side will be reassured that it can take stronger commitments because they will be financed and implemented in the end.
Thanks so much, Remy, again, helping us to understand really what lays ahead of us. And I think you particularly point on 2.1c, how to align, what do we need to do, like reflect and be very clear of, learn the lessons of what has worked and what hasn't. And I think, Benoit, you obviously have been, and I foresee, been at the forefront thinking about, Paris alignment and, what's the role of public development banks. I'd love to get your reflections on that as well.
Well, thanks, Barbara. I have two hats today. I'll be speaking with two voices. The first voice will be I'm the managing director of I4C, the Institute for Climate Economics, a think tank dedicated to financing the transition. And the second voice is we are the secretariat of the mainstreaming climate in financial initiatives, but I'll talk about it later on. Two things. I mean, I will merely echo what has been said because lots have been said, and I will echo a little bit and provide some complementary comments. First, when you look at the numbers, they're great. I mean, both the numbers that Barbara and Nicolas pointed out are great. They concretely show the commitment of the DFIs to finance the transition. Good, we see billions, excellent. However, I will echo what Serge said. It's a matter of size. I mean, quantity matters. We need to put some money on the table, and public money, and use it wisely. Second, and I will complement this quantity item with a quality item. It's not only about putting money on the table. If it were that easy, we'd be happy people. It's also a matter of addressing the barriers to actually prevent the market from doing what the market needs to do to finance the transition. And that's where development finance institutions can actually be instrumental, despite their, challenge me, relatively small size. They're quite small, but they're instrumental. In French, we tend to say petit mais costaud for those who have a reference. I'll come afterwards and I'll try to explain to you what it means. Basically, they're small but hefty and with possibly some impact. Second thing, when as you pointed out, Barbara, I mean, the numbers are impressive. However, we are nowhere near enough to get to 1.5 2 degree, let alone 1.5. So, what can be done? I see three challenges for DFIs in the coming years. I mean, three items that I'd like to flag. First, uh, DFIs cannot solely look at financed emissions. I mean, because they have development mandate, because they have a mandate, because they have development objectives, they need to look beyond financed emissions and tons of CO2. Just to make a long story short, so it's not only looking at dollars, and it's not only looking at tons of CO2 abated through their financed emissions. The bulk of the contribution of DFIs is actually, my point of view, is be expected from the means of implementation that those DFIs can actually help out. That includes climate finance, but it's not limited to climate finance. And consistency, and since I remember who said that, Article 2.1.c, that's basically consistency with Article 2.1.c. That needs to be looked at. It was in your presentation, Nicolas, if I'm not mistaken. That's what we need to aim for. Is the action of a DFI is consistent with Article 2.1.c? That's the only question that needs to be asked and the only question that needs to be answered. And that's my third point. Volumes, then again, are great. And when I look at this side, sorry, Javier, I'll take your your picture as well. When I look at this side, impressive. 5 years, 10 years down the road, I could see even bigger figures, and I'd be even more impressed. But question I would like to see, or the answer I would like to see in a couple of years, is how have those institutions on the left-hand side, how have they actually contributed to the rolling out, the implementation of an NDC, an LTS, etc., and a transformation of the economy of a given country to make it consistent with 2.1.c. And given the membership of IDFC, I believe landscapes, the global landscape is great, national, regional landscapes, assessing what is done against what needs to be done, that's great, and that's a great roadmap for development institutions. I'll keep it short.
Thanks so much, Benoit. And as you know, I couldn't agree more. I think we really need to go at the country level, at the sector level, even to really understand the needs, and then come up with the, who can do what, and who are the actors, and what's the role of development finance institutions together with others, and how can you bring them together. So I think your points and the consistency with 2.1c, but also I think ultimately you were talking about the impact really that money has. So it's not only about the volume, it's also about how you use the money most effectively. Extremely important. But you already said, okay, so you want to see what these institutions here actually do to get more on that side. So I think that brings me back, Javier and Serge, to you, really trying to understand a little bit, not now as your head as the IDFC chairman, but really as CEO of Banco de what is it that you are planning to do? What's the contributions of your institutions in this context? So over to you again, Javier.
Thank you. So again, I'll try and make 3 points to answer the question. First is when you look at the institution, of course, I speak for Bancolex, but I think this may apply to DFIs across the table. We typically tend out to look out for our bottom line, net profits, and return on equity. We have to. We're bankers. Even though we're public development institutions, we are bankers. But I think going forward, return on equity has to be kept at a level which is low, safe, but with more emphasis on impact. So that fine line between making money and preserving the institution, or making less money and providing for better and deeper impact, has to be navigated. And I think that's a crucial point because again, we cannot, in order for our institutions to commit to what we need to do, we need to preserve them, but we can't preserve them so much that we don't accomplish the mission. So I think that's for finance and accounting and impact, and all the do good that we have to do have to come into play. So my first point is, let's not focus so much on return on equity. Let's focus on impact, making sure we also keep the institution safe. Second point would be innovation. When we do this, and as we collaborate more with each other, we need to provide for different lines of credit, different projects to be financed. And I can cite examples from home. We have microfinance lines of credit for climate adaptation. And at least in the case of Colombia, more than 90% of enterprises are micro enterprises. So even though we need to work with the big, because the big numbers are with the big projects, we need to work in large volumes with microfinance and small and medium enterprises. So that would be my second point. And I guess I'll probably go back to again, it's all about collaboration. If we only look at the balance sheet of Bancolex in Colombia's case, then we're missing on the bigger picture. We need to work more with our sister institutions, Findeter and FDN and so forth. And regionally, of course, deepen integration with CAF and the others. So again, to me, it's all about collaboration within the country, outside of the country, and making sure that we fulfill our mission, because sometimes we tend to be lax, sometimes we tend to just be complacent on the fact that we're doing good, but we have to deepen, making sure that it's all about impact and not just about the financials. So I'll probably stop there. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. On our side, we have launched our strategic plan in 2021 for the period 2021, 2020, 2025, and we have committed to spend 25%, to allocate, sorry, 25% of our balance sheets. So this is new money to climate finance. So which is brand new for us. And as Javier has rightly mentioned, we're now focusing more and more on impact. So yes, the question of the quantum of the volumes are important, but you're right. Technically, we need to do things differently. So 25% of our actual finance is strictly dedicated to contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation. And to do so, the question of cooperation is essential, actually. And we're more and more working with climate funds. The first of all, the adaptation fund, the green climate fund, but also the green and global environmental fund, and that give us the access to larger fund, but also give us access to technical assistance when it comes to mitigation, but also to adaptation. When it comes to the impact, the question of the impact, we have also worked on how to spare, how to limit the CO2 emissions, and this is generally applied, equally applied, I would say, among our 8 members country, which is basically brand new. So it's very concrete, it's very granular, and it's a strong commitment that has been basically approved by our shareholders. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think again, clear goals here, but at the same time, this collaboration, I think comes back and again. And I think also have a very unique role in how you can bring together different actors because the ecosystems, you have access, the market. So I think extremely important. But brings me actually back. I think the last question back to you, Benoit. And I think again, to do this role of collaboration partnerships like the IDFC, but also MCI, which we have already heard there will be some signing going on very shortly. So what is it that you think the role of these types of partnerships are?
Well, those partnerships are paramount. I mean, I like sharing. I like, as you said, Javier, You said deepening collaboration, sharing, those are very important words, and networks are paramount in this effort. Just a couple of words about MCI, Mainstreaming Climate in Financial Institutions. We are an initiative that brings together 50 plus financial institutions, public and private, um, but from developed and developing economies, and the target is to mainstream climate into the considerations and operations of each financial institution. So basically, what we focus on is on sharing experiences, good and bad. Even sharing a bad experience is sometimes valuable, and even more valuable than good experience if you understand why you haven't succeeded yet. Um, we never fail; we don't succeed yet. Well, that's different. And the objective is also to lead by example and show that things are feasible, moving from, oh, we can't do it or it's impossible, to, oh, yeah, we've tried it and we haven't succeeded yet in the worst case. So concretely, what we provide is three things: a framework with 5 voluntary principles that members are required to adhere to. Second, resources from research, but also from the field, practitioners, resources that can actually break down the journey towards climate mainstreaming into concrete steps. So moving from what needs to be done to how to do it concretely. And third, we have a platform for discussion that is provided through dedicated events to the members. So that's a secure platform in the sense that members can freely exchange on what they've succeeded in doing and what they haven't succeeded yet in doing. So we have a number of dedicated events. Now I understand IDFC shares similar events, and the partnership that we are about, the MOU that we're about to sign is basically formalizing what has been done in the past years concretely, because as far as I know, half of the members of IDFC are also members of the initiative. So there's a clear connection between the two. And we welcome, I mean, we'd like hopefully all members of IDFC to join the initiative and become climate deniers, so to speak. We don't care about the current level of implication. We care about ambition. So if you're bad, come and join us and improve. That's basically our message. If you're good, come and join us and show the rest of the world how to do it. That will be my message basically to the members. And I welcome this partnership with IDFC. Then again, it's only formalization of something that has been done over the years since COP21, if I'm not mistaken.
But thank you so much, Benoit. And again, I do have to again commend you on all you've done. I think sometimes it is important to formalize these types of partnerships. Also, as Remy said before, to help influence others and showcase basically what's happening. So I think it is a great step to kind of just showcase this. But we are getting, unfortunately, I think to the end of our time. And again, we could certainly continue much longer, but there will be lots of side events, as Nicola has shown here. So come back to this space a lot. I think just my takeaways from this discussion here, I think we need to obviously focus on the quantity and the quality. So the quantum, let's make sure that we continue to build on this side, but at the same time, let's really focus on the impact of the money, and let's make sure that the money that you already have in the system is being used more effectively and through collaboration, bring in other pools of capital. So quantity, quality, innovation, again, I think is something. Innovation doesn't necessarily mean you need to come up with new things all the time. Very often it is something that has been done and that just can be scaled, or has not been done in the green space. So quantity, quality, innovation, collaboration, I think was the clear kind of key takeaway across all within the country, outside of the country, regionally, globally, across different constituencies. I think extremely important. And the final point, I think capacity, which came up several times, but also from you, Nicola, technical assistance, these types of facilities, these ways of working with others who have technical assistance support, I think is extremely important. But yeah, ultimately it is about connecting the two sides here, but not only going beyond them and bring together the whole ecosystem. So thank you so much. And please join me in thanking my panel here. Thanks all.
Sustainable Development Goals towards 2030 and beyond. What is IDFC Climate Facility? Created in 2019, the facility has been supporting IDFC members in enabling knowledge exchange and offering capacity development on climate-related topics. Our 3 goals: to strengthen climate finance expertise and capacities, to originate and develop joint climate projects, to institutionalize and facilitate collaborative work among members on climate change. Our activity lines: knowledge sharing, capacity building, access to international climate finance, joint business opportunities. In the past couple of years, the IDFC had been supporting members in mainstream common principles on mitigation and adaptation, developing a framework for the operationalization of the Paris Agreement alignment, promoting a mentoring program between institutions, delivering climate toolbox including GHG accounting,